Hello, welcome to the Assay TV. I'm Leo Stemp and I'm here in Hong Kong today, and I'm joined on the line from Australia by two globally renowned exploration geologists who are going to be telling us a little bit more about recent exploration activities in the Macquarie Arc of the Lachlan Fold Belt in New South Wales. First up, we're going to hear from Richard Schodde, who is Managing Director of Minex Consulting. He's a globally recognized commentator on trends and activities in the exploration sector. Richard, good to speak to you today. The Lachlan Fold Belt is widely recognized as one of the foremost porphyry belts in Australia and is currently a hotspot for exploration activities. Richard, if you could just sort of help us set the scene for us today, if you can outline some of the key points about the mineral endowment of this region and where it sits on a global scale.
Sure. I mean, the Lachlan Fold Belt is in the southern part of New South Wales. Actually runs into Victoria as well, but that's another story. It has been well known for probably about 30, 40 years. There are a number of significant, if not world-class ore bodies that are sitting on it. The most famous of which would be the Cadia camp, which is owned by Newcrest. In fact, it is the thing that generates all the wealth for Newcrest, which is probably about the third or fourth largest gold mining company in the world. Now, the Lachlan Arc, from a geological perspective, is very well endowed with porphyries, which are gold rich, which is a little bit unusual. When you put all of the resources together that are currently available and what's been mined in the past, you're probably talking about over 100 million ounces of gold in that district, plus another 24 million tonnes of copper as well. So we're talking about a pretty substantial place to go to explore for copper and develop mines. There's been a long history of mining in that area, going back to the gold rush days of the 1850s. But the copper story really came into effect in the 1980s, 1990s, and it continues through to today. I mean, one of the challenges that has occurred in this particular part of the world is that Australia is an old continent and things are covered with overburden. So it's a little bit tricky finding and identifying good deposits. They're hidden underground. The ones that have been found to date generally outcrop or are not. So the next generation of discoveries will be made undercover, and people are starting to develop the right techniques to actually see through that cover and identify opportunities. And a good way of actually identifying that, the fact is the area is not mature, there is still plenty of room to grow, is some of the recent discoveries that have been made there, and the most particular is alkanes. I mean, alkane resources are a small producer, gold producer in the district. They've been around for a number of years, but they've really fallen onto a wonderful ore body called Boda. They're currently drilling. In fact, I think they're only to about their 7th or 8th hole there, but they've come up with some spectacular results which would do any major mining company proud. Just to get you those geologists out there excited. Their latest hole was 1,167 metres at 0.58 grams gold and 0.25% copper. So it really bulks out quite well. In fact, within that is nearly 97 metres at 4 grams gold and 1.5% copper. Sure, it's at depth, but with those type of grades and those type of thicknesses, and the fact that they've followed that up with a number of other holes, talking about a significant discovery there that's going to turn into a mine very soon for sure. So that just sort of shows the excitement in the area.
Fantastic. And how does it compare with other regions, similar regions around the world?
I mean, the classic place to go for copper, you know, the land of the elephants is Chile and Peru in South America. Those areas are starting to get fairly mature. I mean, the geology is fertile, but the problem is once you get underneath, away from the hills and into the valleys, you find that the cover gets deep very quickly the ability to find the next generation ore bodies there is actually fairly mediocre. So actually, it's an interesting story that people view, Chile and Peru as the place to go for copper. It's good if you already found an ore body. Finding the next generation is very difficult there. The other places to go for copper in the world would be the northwestern part of Canada, British Columbia, and up into Yukon. The grades are pretty low, actually, which makes it a challenge. The last sort of part of the world that you would go for copper, that you can go for, would be into the DRC, Central Africa, and places like that. The challenge there is that you're trading off geological risk with political risk. The ability to actually do business in some parts of this world is quite difficult. So you have to sort of, as an economic geologist, you have to do that trade-off between where can you find a good ore body and where can you make money and feel safe at night. So when you look at that sort of combination, New South Wales, Lachlan Fold Belt for copper and gold is the place to be.
So Richard, can you tell us a little bit about who is exploring in the area and some of the recent activities?
Well, in addition to Alkane with their Boda discovery, there's a number of other companies that are active or recently joined that space. There's probably about half a dozen, if not more, companies, junior companies that are active there, in addition to Alkane. And also, don't forget that Newcrest with Cadia hasn't taken its foot off the pedal as well. They're certainly growing the resource there at Cadia. So there is a number of significant discoveries and resource growth stories going on. I mean, the other mention, apart from Cadia, which is the true elephant, a true tier one in every sense of the word, we do have other deposits in the area as well, which are well established, such as Ridgeway, which is a gold-rich porphyry system, and also Northparkes, which is a real sleeper in that sense. It's been around for a long time. The grades are, the resources just keeps growing and growing and growing for that one. They've got over 600 million tonnes of ore there now, and that's a mine that's 25, 30 years ago. It's amazing.
And the economics of some of these mines are pretty impressive as well.
Oh, very much so. Yeah, coming back to Cadia, we're talking about something that's producing 900,000 ounces a year of gold, plus significant copper byproduct credits. And when you add those byproduct credits into there, their all-in sustaining cost is of the order of US $130 an ounce. And when you compare that to where the gold price is today, as we speak, it's over 1,600. That's a pretty good margin to operate with. And you see a similar story as well with the Northparkes project as well. The margins are not quite there, but they have an all-in cash cost of probably less than $2 a pound for copper, which makes them a pretty solid operator.
And also, a lot of these companies have been quite successful raising money recently. Tell us a little bit about that.
You know, the story out of North America is all gloom and doom. Junior companies really struggle to raise cash, but that's not really the case here in Australia. I mean, every junior company will say it is difficult to raise money, but the truth is that over $80 million has been raised in the last year or two to fund exploration programs in the Lachlan Fold Belt here in New South Wales, which is a great testament. That
$80 million, is that, how many companies is that spread across?
That's spread across 8 companies, 8 junior companies, and that's not counting the spend that goes on by at Cadia and Northparkes, which are run by the big boys. So if you add those into there, I was looking at the stats. Over $250 million Aussie is spent in exploration in New South Wales last year, which is up 10% over the previous year, and a good part of that is being spent on gold and copper exploration.
So thank you very much, Richard, there for that overview of the Lachlan Fold Belt and the Macquarie Arc. Now we're going to hear from John Holliday. John, as I mentioned before, is a director and on the technical committee of Kincora Copper. John, however, was also the principal discoverer and site manager for the Tier 1 Acadia project, which Richard talked about just now, and has been involved in multiple other discoveries and exploration programs in the Macquarie Arc, and is still based locally. Where he's joining us today from his house, right in the heart of the region. So, John, good to see you today. Can you just tell us a little bit more about some of the details of what's happening there in the Macquarie Arc?
Yeah, thanks, Leo. Sure, I can do that. The Macquarie Arc is a key part of the Lachlan Fold Belt because it's the part that hosts all the major porphyry deposits, the really large ones that Richard talked about. Cadia, Northparkes, Cowal, which is actually a sort of higher level epithermal deposit attached to porphyry systems. And now we've also got a fourth one, which is Alkane's Boda discovery, which Richard also mentioned. The key thing about the Macquarie Arc is it's a very old, more than 400 million year old island arc system, and a number of porphyry systems have developed along it, and we know some of them, but of course some of them have not yet been discovered, hopefully. Its equivalent in modern day terms would be the island arcs of the Southwest Pacific or Indonesia, where there are plenty of large porphyry deposits known as well. But yeah, the Lachlan Fold Belt is more than 400 million years old. And this slide I've got in front of me now shows how it's been split into two belts, which are critical. The green one on the west is the Junee Narromine Belt, and that includes Northparkes and Cowal deposits. And the mauvey brown coloured one on the east is the Molong volcanic belt, which hosts Cadia and the Boda discovery. These belts are comprised of volcanic rocks intruded by monzonitic intrusions, which drive the porphyry copper gold mineralization.
Okay, let's now focus in on Trundle. How did Kincora come to acquire the tenements, and what are your plans for the project?
Our first move was to pick up tenements at Nyngan and Nevertire in the northwest part of the Junee Narromine Belt, and we did that, and that was pre-Boda. Since Boda, we've been surrounded by other people pegging in that area, including Fortescue Metals Group. So we were first movers in there. And then just pre-Boda, we managed to do a deal with another company that was selling a lot of what we thought were very good tenements in the Macquarie Arc. And out of that, we picked up tenements that you can see on this slide: Trundle, Lake Cowal, Gemalong, Cundumble and Condobolin. The key one for us was Trundle, which is an underexplored area, which is part of the same volcanic complex that hosts the Northparkes deposit. So in effect, Trundle is really a sort of brownfields tenement to Northparkes. And there's a slide here that illustrates that, which is here, which is this map of the magnetics in the Northparkes Trundle area shows Kincora's Trundle EL, and outlined in black there is the volcanic complex that hosts Northparkes, and it extends across a Tullamore Rift area, which is thicker cover, and to the Trundle area where the cover is much thinner again. I've explored Trundle way back in the past for Newcrest, but that was way back in the 90s when people weren't drilling holes nearly as deep as they do now. And when I got to look at the Trundle data, I was really very excited because some very good work had been done doing high quality induced polarization surveys and really good magnetic modelling work, but no one had really followed any of this up with deeper drilling, or hardly any deeper drilling. And when you do look at the drill holes that have been drilled there, there's some pretty significant intersections already. 60 metres of 0.54 gold. There's one deeper hole that is clearly going into higher grade copper, and yet no one ever followed it up. There's quite a series of IP and magnetic features which could be indicating significant porphyry pipe intrusions similar to Ridgeway and the Northparkes pipes, and no one's ever drilled these things. So yeah, we're very excited at Kincora about the potential of Trundle.
Fantastic. And what are your plans going forward from here? What are the next steps?
Well, the next steps, Leo, are to get into Trundle and start drilling some holes. We don't really need to do a lot more target generation work. As I said, the quality of the IP and magnetic data and the previous drill hole vectoring information gives us some immediate targets, which are quite exciting. And they're shown on this slide here. The first priority holes are the drill holes in red and the second stage in yellow. We're looking at focusing on 3 areas. They're called Bailey's, Mordialloc and Trundle Park. That's shown on the figure on the right of the slide there, and that's over the top of the magnetic image. Now, porphyry systems happen where you have complex magnetic patterns driven by intrusions into volcanic piles, and that's what we've got at Trundle Park and up at Bailey's Mordialloc area. But drilling at all these places has been relatively shallow. So we've designed a first pass program with a set of holes to really look for the ore bodies and intrusions at deeper levels below the known outcropping mineralization. So yeah, that slide on the left-hand side shows a 3D perspective of the combined IP anomalies and the magnetics. So you can see some IP high chargeability shells and how they coincide with the high magnetics. And those particular areas are really very poorly drilled compared with areas like Northparkes or Arcadia. And we think there's considerable potential there to find these porphyry pipes potentially really good grade.
Why do you think it's been overlooked until now?
Well, Leo, it's a combination of things. Firstly, it's a combination of the people who've held the tenements not being able to be aggressive enough in their drilling. Maybe there's funding reasons. People, you have to have a bit of courage in mineral exploration to put a lot of money into deep drilling, and people are a little bit wary of that. The other thing is, exploration evolves over time. So through the 90s, when we were working on Arcadia and we were also drilling at Trundle, back then drilling a 200-metre deep hole was regarded as a deep hole. Quite surprising. We used to come and drill a lot of 200-metre deep RC holes, and we'd have trouble finding a drill rig that could actually drill RC that deep. But that's all changed now, and people are realising you have to go deeper, especially in the Lachlan Fold Belt. And the results of it are things like Gail Kane's Boda. They started drilling deeper under some surface anomalism, and they just had to keep going deeper and deeper till they actually made their discovery.
So what are the timelines for getting your drill bits turning?
Really, we're just waiting on site approvals from the government authorities. We've got drilling contractors we can line up, and we could go for it. So this will all be happening as soon as we can, presuming the COVID-19 thing doesn't stop us.
That's been a very fascinating look at this region, and also an update on some of Kincora Copper's activities in the region. John and Richard, thank you very much for joining us here today, and wish you best of luck for the year ahead.